Testing. Okay. Good evening. This is Monday, October 5th, 2020. We're here for a City of Leawood governing body meeting, and I would like the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Azzeltine?
Here.
Mrs. Kane?
Here.
Mr. Sipple?
Here.
Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Mrs. Harrison?
Here on Zoom.
Mrs. Philla?
Here.
Mr. Osmond?
Here.
Mr. Rawlings?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. As you are able, would you please rise? We will face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone on Zoom tonight as well. The next item is the approval of the agenda, and item 13 under committee recommendations, which is a item for mixed use located south of 133rd and west of State Line Road, commonly called the Cameron's Court Development, at the request of the developer, is being remanded to the Planning Commission. And there will be no developer's presentation this evening, no staff presentation, and no presentation from the public. I think maybe it might be appropriate to take a motion for that remand now, since we're talking about it at the approval of the agenda, or would the approval of the agenda incorporate that remand? Ms. Bennett?
Mayor, you could amend the agenda to move that up to maybe your first item under present or special business, if we have special business.
We do have special business.
You could make a 7A, and the one that we do have a 7B, and that way you could hear this first, and anybody who was on the Zoom meeting for that item.
Well, actually, I'm just making the announcement so that can be voted on by the council, but that's already been.
It should be a separate vote.
Okay. All right. So noting that modification that will take place under special business, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Motion from Ms. Villa, was that?
Second.
Motion from Ms. Villa, second from Mr. Sipple. Any discussion? Ms. Kane?
This is kind of, well, sometimes it's unusual, sometimes it's not, but how is the public, I mean, I'm assuming we were going to have a bunch of public to speak tonight. How and when was the public notified of this?
There were 4 people who had signed in to speak. And I don't know if they were notified in advance, if we had their contact info.
Of the remand, yes, I believe Mr. Klein, for everybody who had signed in to speak, and we may have added 2 today, so there may have been a total of 6. And I believe Mr. Klein notified each of them, and Mr. Kurz put a flag across the front of the website and by the YouTube link for anybody who is watching to let them know that a remand request was on the agenda and that the developer was not going to make a presentation and that public comments were not going to be heard.
That's perfect, thank you. I really applaud that. I just wanted to make sure that the citizens know that they are being heard and have been heard, and we didn't
will
find.
be heard.
What?
And they will be heard.
Oh, absolutely, will be
Sure.
heard, and this was a surprise to us too, so,
Yeah.
thank you.
Ms. Larson?
Thank you. A quick question. Do we have a date that the Cameron's Court will be remanded to for the Planning Commission?
I actually don't know.
Mr. Klein is on the Zoom. We'll see if he has that date.
October 27th would be the Planning Commission meeting it would go to.
Okay.
And then I think that would make it eligible for the November 16th as far as for the City Council.
Okay. Thank you. Just for anyone that's watching on Zoom, so we can start publicizing that date early and often.
Of course,
is appreciated.
you know, the Planning Commission is a different body, and they do end their meetings at 10, and so it's very important to keep track of their business because,
Agreed.
while it's scheduled, you know, it's subject
Yes.
to change.
Yes.
Okay,
Agreed. Thank you.
thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, for approval of the agenda.
Mrs. Phila,
Aye.
Mr. Osmond,
Aye.
Mrs. Harrison,
Aye.
Mr. Rawlings,
Aye.
Mrs. Lawson,
Aye.
Mr. Sipple,
Aye.
Mrs. Kane,
Aye.
Mr. Etzeltine.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's approved unanimously. And now we have a city clerk statement, please.
Mayor and Council, to reduce the likelihood of the spread of COVID-19 and to comply with social distancing recommendations, this meeting of the Leawood governing body is being conducted remotely using the Zoom media format, and some of the members of the governing body are appearing remotely. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, and the public can access live stream by going to www.leawood.org. Public comment on non-agenda items will not be accepted during this meeting. Public comment on agenda items not requiring a public hearing may not be accepted. As always, public comment on any agenda item can be submitted in advance. Written public comments received at least 24 hours prior to the meeting have been distributed to the members of the governing body prior to the meeting. Public comment should be directed to Leawood Public Comment gb@leawood.org. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We move now to proclamations. And Ms. York, we have the National Arts and Humanities Month. And so I would like to present you the proclamation, however, I think Ms. Varner has it on her. So you can hold it, and I'll read a few of the whereases into the record. So whereas the nation's 120,000 nonprofit arts organizations, the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the nation's 4,500 local arts agencies, and the Arts and Humanities Councils of the 50 states and the 6 U.S. jurisdictions have regularly issued official proclamations on an annual basis designating October as National Arts and Humanities Month. Whereas the arts and humanities play a unique role in the lives of our families, our communities, and our country. Whereas cities and states, through their local and state arts agencies and representing thousands of cultural organizations, have celebrated the value and importance of culture in the lives of Americans and the health of thriving communities during National Arts and Humanities Month for several years. Whereas the arts and culture industry also strengthens our economy by generating $166.3 billion in total economic activity annually, $27.5 billion in government revenue, and by supporting the full-time equivalent of 4.6 million jobs. Whereas the creative economy drives tourism and commerce, supports American workers, and makes up 4.5% of the annual GDP, proposed federal legislation titled the CREATE Act and the PLACE Act would support economic development of the creative economy. Now, therefore, I, Peggy Dunn, Mayor of the City of Leawood, Kansas, do hereby proclaim October as the National Arts and Humanities Month in the City of Leawood, Kansas, and furthermore, call upon our community members to celebrate and promote the arts and culture in our nation and to specifically encourage the greater participation by those said community members in taking action for the arts and humanities in their towns and cities. And Ms. York, I want to thank you as our Cultural Arts Coordinator for all you do for our city in this endeavor. And I've seen a lot of activity lately at College and Row in anticipation of the new Rita Blitz sculpture that will be installed. And I know Women of the World will soon be going in front of the Justice Center. And so hopefully, maybe before the end of this year, possibly, they might.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. Okay, well, we're looking forward to it, and we know you have so many things on your plate that you do, quality of life amenities that make our community so special. So I just want to really thank you, and I think we owe you a round of applause for everything.
Mayor, might I
Yes.
say, I've had the pleasure of working closely with Holly and on several projects, and I am just thrilled out of my mind. And many of them are the new energy and new blood and new enthusiasm that she's bringing as our new cultural arts director. So thank you. You're so welcome, and came off the starting block super, super strong, and thank you for everything. I look forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Thank you, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, and thank you for being here this evening, too. Thanks. The next proclamation we have is the Double 10 Day, October 10th. And I would like to read that as well. And this will be sent to the Director General of the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Denver, Director General Jerry Chang. Whereas the Republic of China on Taiwan will be observing its 109th anniversary during the Double 10 holiday on October 10th, 2020. Whereas in 1989, Taiwan and the state of Kansas, through an act of the Kansas legislature, entered into a sister state relationship. Whereas the city of Yilan, Taiwan, and the city of Leawood, Kansas, entered into a sister city relationship of enduring friendship and international peaceful cooperation at Chicheng Hall in Yilan on October 7th, 1988. Whereas our already strong economic and cultural ties will become even greater as a result of these interrelationships. Whereas the city of Leawood is looking forward to further promoting the relationship with Taiwan for mutual benefits. Whereas the city of Leawood is delighted to join in observing the annual tradition and extending congratulations and best wishes to Taiwan during this celebration. Now, therefore, I, Peggy Dunn, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Leawood, Kansas, do hereby proclaim Saturday, October 10th, 2020, as Double 10 Day in the city of Leawood, and urge all citizens to recognize this observance. And for the first time in a maybe as long as I can remember, this Double 10 Day celebration, this National Day celebration, is going to be held virtually. And the Director General invited me to prepare a video and send it to them, which, with the help of Information Services Director Ross Kurz, we were able to put together and get off to them last week. So they will have that for their event. So we certainly have gained enormously from that relationship and congratulate them on this holiday. We have no presentations or recognitions. We go now to special business, item 7A, and this is voting on the remand of the item under committee recommendations, item 13, to the Planning Commission's October 27th Planning Commission meeting. And I would entertain a motion for that remand.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Sipples, second from Mr. Azzeltine. And any discussion?
Mayor, for the record, it might be noted for the Planning Commission, normally it comes back with some instruction from you, is to cover the changes that have been made in the plan and to let the plan be complete, to let them add the things that are missing that they've indicated in their plan.
Well, as I understand it, this plan has changed
It has.
since the Planning Commission denied it. It is still yet to be completed. It is not a complete plan, so the staff has yet to review it and give comments. So for all of those reasons, the developer requested this be remanded so the planning staff can do their job, and then it will go to the Planning Commission for them to review the new plan. I guess maybe just modified. I don't know how substantial the modifications are, but at any rate, when it then completes the process at the Planning Commission, it will come to this body. And I don't know if the Planning Commission will have another public hearing, Ms. Bennett. I know the public hearing was closed, and it's different than our group, which accepts citizen comments all the time.
It was, assuming these are not substantial modifications under our code, assuming that they are minor changes, they will not have a new public hearing. But as we had in a recent development, the changes were substantial, and they had to start over with a new interact and a new public hearing. So it kind of just depends on last I talked with planning, I don't think they were substantial changes enough to warrant a new interact and a new public hearing.
Okay. But the public should rest assured that we have citizen comments. We also have all of their written communications, and they've been included in our packets. So, and I know you all have read them, but they will have the opportunity, if they so choose, to speak at our city council meeting for sure. Ms. Kane?
So planning is not going to hear it before staff has time to comment.
No, the staff would want to review, and they don't have a
Right.
complete set of plans.
Right.
According to Ricky Sanchez, and I had a memo that you all were sent Friday afternoon.
Yes, I saw that. So if it's not complete, then I'm just wondering, is there any chance that planning will hear an incomplete item, or will it be delayed if they don't fill in the blanks?
Typically, they do not hear incomplete items, but I know they did the last time because the traffic study was not complete, and they went ahead and the Planning Commission heard it. That was one of the reasons, though, perhaps for denial. So it'd probably be smart to get everything completed.
One would think.
Yeah.
But, yeah, okay, just wondering. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm looking on the Zoom. All right, then roll call, please.
Mr. Esseltine?
Aye.
Mr. Sipple?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kane?
Aye.
Mr. Rawlings?
Aye.
Mr. Osmond?
Aye.
Mrs. Philla?
Aye.
Mrs. Harrison?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Then 7B is a resolution amending Resolution 5405 and providing for a special call for a special governing body meeting for October 12th, 2020, for the purpose of considering planning case numbers 70-20 and 81-20 pertaining to the Villa de Fontana development and requests for public financing.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion from Ms. Villa and a second from Mr. Sipple. Is there any other discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Lorson?
Aye.
Mr. Esseltine?
Aye.
Mrs. Kane?
Aye.
Mr. Sipple?
Aye.
Mrs. Philla?
Aye.
Mr. Osmond?
Aye.
Mr. Rawlings?
Aye.
Mrs. Harrison?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, it's approved unanimously. Thank you. The number 8 is the consent agenda items 8A through I. Is there anything anyone would like to pull? Mr. Sipple?
8E, please. E is in Edward.
Anything else anyone wants to pull? Ms. Larson?
H, please.
All right, anything else? I'm looking at the Zoom folks.
Ms. Harrison has her hand up.
Ms. Harrison?
I had H as well.
H? Okay.
H is in Harrison, yes.
Okay, all right. Anything else? All right, then a motion to approve the remainder, please.
Move to approve the remainder?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Ms. Kane and a second from Mr. Sipple. Roll call, please.
Mr. Osmond?
Aye.
Mrs. Harrison?
Aye.
Mrs. Philla?
Aye.
Mr. Rawlings?
Aye.
Mr. Sipple?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kane?
Aye.
Mr. Esseltine?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, it's approved unanimously. Thank you. 8E is a resolution approving and authorizing the mayor to execute 2021 employee benefit plan documents. Mr. Sipple.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question for the HR department. There's a comment on the bullet points on the cover sheet says we are decreasing the city's contribution calculation of employee and spouse to 65%. This is for health insurance. My question is, how does that compare to other municipalities in Johnson County? And what are we decreasing it from? What was the contribution prior to going to 65%?
Nick Sanders, Human Resources. The contribution rate for the employee plus spouse on that base plan that we calculate everything on was 83%, and we're dropping it to 65%. Part of that decision has been a conversation for the last several years of somehow managing the cost of the spouse. It is about 50% of our expenses on claims. And so we decided to make that decision this year. What it did, it helped us actually drop below and allowed us to stay within budget for the estimated expenses.
Now, to go to 65%, does that include the family as well?
The family is not 65%, it actually is at 75%. So,
75.
because in order to cover the dependents, they would still go, they are still staying constant.
Okay, so we were at 80, would you say?
83.
83 going to 65?
Yes.
And how many employees will that affect?
Let's see here.
Ballpark, you don't have
I've actually got the right number. It is, we have a total of 38 employees on that coverage.
Okay.
That is also inclusive of retirees, and they pay 100% of the cost for themselves. We estimate that probably about 25% or 10 people-ish will move from that plan to single coverage. There may be some that take on and bring on their family as well, so we kind of play that game in the assuming 10% decrease or so. Maybe one or two will move to the family side just to make sure we stay under budget.
Okay, the second question, Nick, was how does that compare to the other municipalities in Johnson County?
A lot of the other municipalities pay a little bit more. Have been a great deal of conversation in charging what's called spousal surcharges, being that if the spouse has an opportunity to go for coverage elsewhere and they still stay on the city's plan, there's an additional fee that gets assessed to them as a premium of sorts, being on the city's plan in lieu of taking the spouse's plan.
I guess the question is, do our employees think this is a good deal, or do they think other municipalities are giving them a better deal?
It really varies. We don't know yet at the moment. We've had a couple people inquire. It is definitely a difference in expenses. But to get to that point where we want to make sure that, you know, when the people that are in there to cover just the spouse, they actually have a great deal of skin in that game by paying that premium. I think you're going to see a little bit more trend to go that route from the market itself, because those added spouse coverages are so much more expensive, especially with ours being at least 50% of what our claims are. Somehow we need to mitigate those, which is what is part of the reason causing us to go to a 12% increase overall.
Has this been a high benefit year for these insurance companies?
Defined benefit year. Profits, it's hard to tell, but we are seeing a 12% increase. Now, granted, we started out at much higher than that through negotiations and partnerships for long-standing agreements with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. We were able to come to an understanding that we would actually drive that down to 11.8% with no plan design changes. A lot of the other agencies are going through plan design changes that are, you know, straight high deductible plans, or they are less co-pays, things of that sort. So that's what separates us from most of the other agencies. We have a very rich plan that actually keep people here and attract people to come to work here.
Well, you know, we really take care of our employees, and I compliment you and your department for taking care of our employees. I just don't want the employees to feel as though they're not getting a fair deal or a good deal as compared to Prairie Village and Olathe and Overland Park. So
Right.
if you're comfortable that we're competitive, that's what we want to hear.
Yes, very much so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion from Mr. Sippel, second from Ms. Larson. Mr. Sanders, before you leave, I just want to compliment you, because I know you worked hard at getting this fee lowered from initially projected. And so I want to say thank you for your efforts.
Yeah. It's definitely with the partnership with our brokers. And the part of the reason that we are able to kind of have those conversations is we have a good relationship with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Well, we're not an agency that jumps from plan to plan. We did do our due diligence. We did go out to market and make sure that what Blue Cross was giving us as a rate increase was competitive. With the other larger player in the market, United Healthcare, it was actually a little bit more for a lesser quality plan. So we felt comfortable in moving this route with going to what's presented to you today.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Can I also say, I just learned coming in that you were responsible for our care package, our COVID care package.
Yes.
And I thought that was very clever, and I want to thank you. I didn't know where, I knew it came from the city, but I wasn't quite sure where, so thank you for that. That was,
My pleasure.
that was clever and exciting and fun to open, all of the above. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And we have some extras if you need any extra sanitizer, tiny sanitizer.
I totally would take.
It may be a premium before long, again.
Yeah.
Popcorn, anybody need
Popcorn.
popcorn? So, but we couldn't do those things without the support of you guys and Scott. And I couldn't do it without the support of my staff. They stay with me, all the crazy ideas that we have and the things that we do. They're in it with me in the trenches. So I have to give the credits mostly to them.
Well,
But thank
it
you.
was a nice treat. You know, it's been kind of hairy and long, and for all of us, right?
Yeah.
But certainly not just us. But thank you for that. Thank you for going
You're
that
welcome.
extra step into your staff.
Yeah, I will tell you, if you have green shred paper, do not get rid of it. The Parks and Recreation Department is taking it and will be using it for other things if they need to. So
Oh,
if you want to
nice.
return that, you can do so.
Okay, I've got it.
And you're welcome, Chris, by the way.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Etzeltine?
Aye.
Mrs. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Sipple?
Aye.
Mrs. Kane?
Aye.
Mr. Osmond?
Nay.
Did you
Mrs.
say
Harris?
nay? Nay?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Mrs. Harrison?
Aye.
Mrs. Phila?
Aye.
Mr. Rawlings?
Aye.
Thank you.
And Mr. Osmond, would you like to state your reasons for the nay vote?
Yes, and I'll make it very brief. This by no means is a vote against our insurance with our employees. But as I said last year at this time when we looked at this through Blue Cross Blue Shield, it is becoming self-evident that Blue Cross is going after some of the large companies. And it's a shame that they have gotten rid of these small business owners throughout the metro. There are several hundreds of thousands of people that have been canceled by Blue Cross, specifically, but for they are a sole proprietor or a small business and left to try to deal with other insurances or going through the the open market. So I just wanted to put that on record that that is my dissent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, 8H is a resolution approving, authorizing the mayor to execute an independent contractor agreement between the city and KC Banner in the amount of $29,249.98 pertaining to the replacement of street banners in various locations throughout the city. First, I think Ms. Larson, you pulled it first.
Thank you. First, I wanted to thank Julie Kane and the committee that put together all the plans for these banners. I really enjoy seeing them. When I'm driving through Leawood, I love the banners. And I have noticed that they have faded, and so putting them on the sunbrella fabric is a terrific idea. I'm not worried, about the expense because I think it's a great amenity, or it dresses up our city. I love seeing them. I just wondered, for the banners that were originally created, do we get any refund or because they didn't quite perform perhaps how we had hoped, despite everyone's best efforts in working hard on these?
Holly York, Cultural Arts Supervisor. I believe that company, it was delivered in 2019. We did not make a final payment to them because we didn't quite get what we wanted, but I believe there was no refund.
Okay. So do we know how much that final payment that we did not?
Yes. We had put 75% down, and so we did not pay the remaining 25% balance, which is $3,719.89.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Ms. Harrison,
Thank you. Ms. Larson asked a couple of my questions, so thank you, Mary. But I also wanted to ask, is there an opportunity while we are having them reprinted to make them a tiny little bit more readable? What I've noticed is that the white letters, when they are up against, especially the yellow background, which I believe one or two of the banners have a yellow background, the white versus the yellow is a little hard to read that white word. Is there any way to do a very thin outline of all of those letters in a thin black line so that those words pop a little bit more? I think when we approved the design, and I love the process that we went through, we didn't anticipate what they'd be like to look at when we were driving 35 miles an hour, and that the word would not pop quite as much as it did on paper. So that would be my only hope, that we might make that tiny little change, which I don't feel like is an artistic change, but something I hope we can consider.
Yes, that's something that we could work with the designer on. And we even had to sort of transcribe the original design, slightly modify it to fit on Sunbrella. And the Sunbrella fabric, we're using the colored fabric as part of the color scheme. And so the yellow that the Sunbrella fabric comes in is actually more of a goldenrod. So it's gonna be a little bit darker than what the original yellow was. So it might actually, the white text might show up more on the goldenrod, but we can even maybe see about getting some samples printed before it goes into mass production to see how it looks.
Sounds like a good idea. I did have a chat with Ms. York prior to the meeting regarding this topic, and just wanting some sort of assurance that we would not see a similar, have a similar experience that we did with these others after such a short time. And she's assured me that these will be better, much better. So, Ms. King?
Well, and as it was stated, I was on that initial committee, and we ordered fabric, we ordered a product that wasn't supposed to fade like that. They assured us it wouldn't. It was a very top-of-mind question, pertinent question that we asked over and over, and so we never knew that this product would fail so quickly. So it was a great disappointment.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I don't have a motion yet.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Ms. Larson and second from Ms. Kane. If there's no further discussion, roll call, please.
Mrs. Larson,
Aye.
Mrs. Phillip,
Aye.
Mrs. Harrison,
Aye.
Mr. Rawlings,
Aye.
Mr. Osmond,
Aye.
Mrs. Kane,
Aye.
Mr. Azzeltine,
Aye.
Mr. Sipple.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. York and Ms. Claxton. That concludes the consent agenda. Moving to the mayor's report, item 9. Over the last couple of weeks, I had the privilege of participating in a Kansas Legislative Affairs virtual discussion that was sponsored by the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, and it was with Secretary of Commerce David Tolan. The highlights that he included in his remarks were that Johnson County's unemployment rate is now 6.1%, which is very, very good. There have been 7,000 applications for the $1.25 billion of CARES Act money for the entire state of Kansas. He feels the border war truce is, although it was like a wall, the border war truce is working well, and there will be a new plan called the Kansas Advantage, Our Strengths Aligning with New Opportunities. This is the first comprehensive economic development strategic plan that reflects the pandemic. This will be coming out in November, just next month, so it will be interesting to see. He did talk about areas of growth and strength, and as should be no surprise, e-commerce has exploded. The year-over-year since last April's percentage increase is 146%. So the total 2020 projection is $4.2 trillion. He said we're also seeing success in capital expenditures. In 2019, there were 93 projects, which totaled $1.32 billion. But in 2020, there have only been 61 projects. However, they total $1.44 billion. So things are doing very well. He said the areas where things have actually been down, total spending is one, which is down 2.4%, which you might think would be more than that. And healthcare is down 12.4%, and restaurants and hotels, 22%. So it was interesting information that I thought was worthy of sharing with you all. I had the privilege also of touring the new PT Solutions Physical Therapy Center that's located in Market Square at 135th and Mission Road. And we want to thank them for being Leawood Chamber members and wish them much success. Very nice people that operate it. Congratulations are in order for our Fair City once again by Money.com, who did an annual review of best places to live ranking, and they looked at cities and towns with populations of at least 25,000. Proud to say that Leawood was the only city in Kansas to be recognized in one of the top 50. They had a list of 1,890 locations that were reviewed on 212,000 different data points. And then they picked their 50 winners based primarily on the economy, the housing market, the cost of living, diversity, public education, health and safety, weather and lifestyle, and quality of life amenities. They also required that the locations picked were racially diverse and well integrated. So we're very proud of Leawood once again for their recognition. And I too, in my mayor's report, was going to thank our HR director, Nick Sanders, and his team for the care boxes recently delivered. I was as struck by the items in the box, perhaps more so by the sentiments on the card that was included. And it was very thoughtful and demonstrated the true appreciation to everyone here in our city staff family who has done everything in their power to make sure our city runs flawlessly during these trying times. And I would like to offer my sincere appreciation to one and all. And that concludes my mayor's report, and we have no council members' report, but we do have a city administrator's report.
I'm here to request your consideration of the holiday lighting ceremony. And given the disparity of ages of the participants and the closeness that everyone is, unfortunately, it is my recommendation that we not hold it this year. But I was bringing it to you for your discussion and decision.
Ms. Kane and Mr. Hazeltine.
But we'll have lights.
Yes, we'll have lights.
We just won't have a lighting ceremony.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Hazeltine.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know how much planning goes into that, but how much lead time would you need to have in order to cancel it, based on conditions?
If you decide tonight, then everyone will have plenty of advance notice about it, so.
But how late, if we wanted to put this decision off, how late could we do that?
The schools work on it. It's the school, it's the music
Yeah, I'd say
teachers.
really we're at that time, quite frankly.
Oh, really? Okay.
Ms. Larson.
Could we, just brainstorming, could we just announce the date that they'll be turned on, flip the switch for the first time in case anybody wants to, like, have a cup of hot chocolate out in the front and see them come on? I don't know. Maybe that's not a,
We could have, they could drive by.
do a drive-by or, you know, be
I
socially
think
distant
that, I
out in
think even
front
the
with
hot chocolate was a concern for staff.
Yeah, I mean, they would bring their own hot chocolate.
Oh,
Like, just a date that, you know, if you want to see the lights come on, flip the switch for the first time. You know, I'm just brainstorming.
Well, again, I appreciate that. Again, to encourage people to come when we're trying to discourage them from coming, kind of sends a mixed message.
Yeah, I understand.
So the game plan would be to turn them on the normal night that they would go on.
Okay.
That'd be it.
we probably could at least have an announcement on the webpage that.
Oh, sure.
Due to COVID, we won't be having our typical, but the lights will be turned on this date. So, I mean, who knows? People might be creative.
That'd be terrific. I'll be
Yeah.
camped out in front.
Yeah.
So, Deborah here, in terms of, could we have it live on YouTube when you know, we could have Lee Woody and the mayor and it could be live on YouTube, was one thought. And my experience in all these years is that 90% of the people coming are the people that are having children or are friends of the participants who are providing the music. Nobody, I mean, it's very, very few people that really show up. Of course, we're getting pretty starved for entertainment, so you never know that if we did make it available, people might drive by just for the countdown. I think not, but that traffic I don't think would be, I don't think that crowd would be very, very big, and it's very easy to spread out or stay in your car in the parking lot. So I think we could do it, but I'm happy just to do a YouTube 10-9-8-7-6-5-4 with some Christmas music. So maybe we could have one of the schools, or not really. We don't want to have any entertainment because that's just a whole other thing to
No,
organize.
that was really the reason to not have the entertainment, but the YouTube idea
Well, I
is
think we could
interesting.
Zoom in as well, but they have to get it organized. I don't know how those people do that, where they have a full symphony of instrumentals and singers and guitar players from all over the world, and they're synced up. I don't know how that works. I'm not thinking that that's what we want to ask for.
A flash
Maybe
mob.
just-
We need a flash
So,
mob, yes. Well, maybe Mr. Kurz will have some thoughts on this YouTube idea.
I do
Ms.
believe
Larson?
we have a singer on the city council. Maybe he could sing.
I vote for denial on that request.
There's some holiday cheer right
You know, I
there.
kind of like this seat, by the way. I think I might just stay here.
Or maybe the schools could pre-record a singing or a song or two.
Put it on YouTube.
We could make this real,
I don't think the choirs are singing. I mean,
No, I don't think,
not.
I don't
No.
think they're singing either.
No.
Yeah.
And the dance troops are not dancing, so that's
Right.
typically who we have.
So-
Leawood
Yeah.
singers,
So
I'm
James
sure.
it is.
So I think, thank you, Mr.
I
Lambert,
get
for
11
bringing
words
this.
leaping if no one's dancing, you know.
Thank you for bringing this discussion. It sounds like we will just have you and Mr. Kurz maybe be creative in thinking of some way to YouTube me flipping the switch to a
Okay, sounds good.
countdown. Pardon?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to our staff report. Don Long, Finance Director, discussion of monthly 2020 sales tax report. Here she is.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Dawn Long, Finance Director. You should all have this form, and it should start looking familiar to you. We've just added the sales tax that we received in September that were for the July sales that we've received. The top left-hand corner in green is the sales and use tax combined. And as you can see, in June, it upticked a little bit, and in July, it's gone back down a little bit. So it's still kind of a volatile situation out there as far as sales tax goes, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Ms. Long?
And I'll continue to bring these to you each month as we get new information.
Okay, great. Well, I was ecstatic when I saw June's report and a little disheartened, but you know, it seems like June was maybe the first month people were finally able to get out, and
I think that's probably right, and I think Leawood's a little bit different than some of the other cities since we don't have the big box stores that remained open during the whole time. Since we're more of a specialty boutique restaurant venue, those I think have been hurt a little bit more, so.
very good. Mr. Sipple?
Thank you. Dawn, can you, in the center of the sheet on the bottom, there are the 4 boxes that are clear, not colored. Help me understand the utilities number, why it was March, April, May, and June. There's a substantial amount of difference in those utilities. And why would the utilities numbers bounce around like that?
You know, I don't know, I'm assuming it's based on usage, but the utilities always fluctuate a lot month to month.
Really?
So, yeah, they do.
Now, the utilities we're talking about is electricity, water.
I'm assuming so,
Wastewater?
yes. I'm assuming so.
I just don't understand the May number. It looks really erratic to me.
Yeah, 343% does seem.
You know, and I asked, Kathy B gets details of this each month and looks at it. And I did ask her both last month and this month if she saw anything in there that looked like it was an anomaly, and there wasn't anything. So I can do some more research on the utility side of it, but I don't have an answer for you right now
Well,
on
it's
that.
not critical, but if you find something, just
Okay,
send us an email.
I will do that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I saw that as well. Thought it was very good. Well, thank you, Ms. Long.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, we now go to, we have no committee recommendations, we have no old business, we have no other business. We go to new business, 16A, scheduling a work session for Monday, October 19th at 6 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Rawlings, second from Ms. Villa.
Which one was this?
The work session at 6 p.m. on October 19th.
Yeah, but what are we doing?
Subject matter.
Well, the subject matter is probably what we didn't do this evening, which is continuation of the EDC tools, because actually we switched tonight's topic.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Madam Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. All right. If there's no further discussion, roll call, please.
Mrs. Philla,
Aye.
Mrs. Harrison,
Aye.
Mr. Osmond,
Aye.
Mr. Rawlings,
Aye.
Mrs. Larson,
Aye.
Mr. Azletine,
Aye.
Mrs. Kane,
Aye.
Mr. Sipple.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. 16B is scheduled governing body meeting Monday, October 19th at 7:30 p.m. Is there a
Move to
motion?
approve.
Motion
Second.
from Ms. Phyllis, second from Mr. Sipple. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Kane,
Aye.
Mr. Azletine,
Aye.
Mr. Sipple,
Aye.
Mrs. Larson,
Aye.
Mr. Rawlings,
Aye.
Mrs. Philla,
Aye.
Mr. Osmond, Mrs. Harrison.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's approved unanimously. I do want to note that we did approve the special meeting for Monday, October 12th, but they did not specify time. I'm assuming that is 7 p.m.
I believe it's at 6.
6 p.m.
Or 6.
Oh, it's 6 p.m.? Oh, thank you. I didn't realize that. We maybe did that last time? the time?
I believe it's in the resolution.
Okay, but it is a city council meeting. It is not a work
Yeah.
session.
Right.
Okay, so, thank you. I would have been here at 7. So, October 12th at 6 PM. I'm sure we would be receiving paperwork to remind us all, so. All right, there being no further business to come before this body, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.